Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long time and we shouldn't have left you, but welcome back into yet another edition of Open Run presented to you by War Media. My name is Gabriel Wilkins, and this week I have the pleasure of being joined by a special guest in the place of our co-host Josh Hicks, who is away this week due to a personal family matter, as we wish him well and nothing but the best. A good friend of mine who is making his debut on the Open Run platform and stepping onto the War Media stage for the second time to talk on all things hoop related, beside me and a man of many trades as well, who goes by the name of Torrence. What's been going on, man?
Doing good, man. Can't complain. How's everything with you?
I've been doing great. I can't complain myself, man. Outside of a tedious election season, just working at the polls and whatnot, life been good. I got to catch up on some of this NBA action, and there's no better time with the playoffs rolling around. But I know it's been a lot of news and stuff that has surfaced since the last time we've done the show here, and we definitely gonna get into that in this week's installment of Open Run. Is me and Torrence. We're gonna take out the time to briefly recap March Madness and discuss the dominant run of UConn and whether or not the reigning national championship program in stores can now be regarded as a true blue blood in college basketball, while also taking some time to discuss an organization that seems to be in the flux down in the Lone Star State among a series of other important matters across the association, as the playoffs are almost upon us. But before we do that, let's take out some time to show some love, as we always do, to tip off Open Run, shouting out those who etched their names into the history books over the last week as part of our Hoop Shoutout segment. Special Hoop Shoutouts this week go to Boston Celtics All-Star forward Jason Tatum for becoming the first player ever in the history of the storied franchise to ever average 30-plus points per game in a season, as well as Giannis Antetokounmpo for becoming the first player in league history to average 30-plus points, 10-plus rebounds, and 5-plus assists per game on 55% shooting from the floor or better in a season, on the way to guiding the Bucks to the best record in the NBA this year, as they await to see who they will face in round one of the playoffs in the Eastern Conference as we record this week's episode. In addition to Joel Embiid and James Harden of the Philadelphia 76ers for becoming the first pair of teammates to win the scoring and assist title in the same season since George Gervin and Johnny Moore of the San Antonio Spurs, who accomplished the feat back in 1982. So, as we always start out the show here on Open Run and with another week of hoops in the books, what are some of the top storylines, games, or moments that have caught your eye the most over the last couple of weeks, Torrance, that you think is worth further discussion? It could be anything regardless of the level, college or high school, even pro level.
Well, let's start with a guy that's kind of become like an internet joke over the past few years, but it's like really important for the league. Udonis Haslem, him playing his last game. No, honestly, with the Miami Heat, with 20 years, 3 championships, played overseas before he got his opportunity with the Heat, really like worked and grinded. I mean, he has a lot of parallels with what we see in the league today with guys coming from the G League, second round picks, and just being with that organization for 20 years. And it adds a level of stability and continuity, like from management, coaches, and players when you have someone that's been around that long. And I think that's going to be a big theme, like in the playoffs. When you look at like teams like the Bulls, when you get a guy like Patrick Beverly over there, and that's an example of somebody bringing the same type of attributes, but he's actually like playing on the court as well. So, I mean, I kind of, wanted to just give a shout out to UD, because I know a lot of people say a lot of things about him, but it's a great story down there.
Oh, for sure. And I'm glad that you highlighted UD and his legacy in the 305. That's a guy, who, as you said, played for that organization for 20 plus years, sacrificed a lot of dollars on the table in the prime of his career to be a part of those championship teams next to Dwayne Wade, who he came into the league with his rookie year in the NBA, and LeBron James and Chris Bosh on the way to 3 titles. And really transitioned well, might I add. Most guys, when they get towards the back nine of their career, they have a very bitter attitude about it. A lot of guys, you really find out who the true pros in the league are at that stage of their careers. But Udonis was a mentor to guys, countless guys, such as Bam Adebayo, Tyler Herro in that locker room. And in some ways, he was kind of like an extra assistant coach for Eric Spoelstra over the last several years. So I truly believe his presence would be missed down in Miami. And I wouldn't be surprised with the way that Mickey Arison and the ownership group down in South Beach likes to take care of their players. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he has a role within that front office at some point, or, just serving as like a liaison to future players that become part of the organization. As I'm pretty sure that with him now gone, the leadership role or component will fall mostly on Bam, with him being the longest tenured guy, I believe, in the franchise once, his career comes to a close following the end of this season.
I see that being Eric Spoelstra, honestly. I think like this next era without UD is going to really lead. It's almost like the Greg Popovich and like San Antonio thing where like the buck stops with like Eric. I mean, he's been there, like, the story video guy, assistant. Then he had the Heatles era. Then he's had this era with UD sort of backing him up. But now, I mean, I think after this postseason run, I think we're going to probably see Miami make some changes. And he's going to definitely be the one consistent going forward. And he's like 20 plus years in the league. So it's not the same when he was with the Heatles, when it was like, do the guys respect him? Does he have enough cachet? No, I mean, he's made it to the finals just in the last few years without them. So I think his voice and presence is going to just become stronger down in South Beach.
Oh, I don't deny that one bit. I think his voice already is strong there. And I think outside of Pat Riley, he's sort of like the next in command. For real, for real.
You remember the Jimmy, him and Jimmy, Jimmy's kind of you need a Udonis Haslam there when you have a Jimmy Butler there. Same way you need a Udonis Haslam there when you have a young team. So, but like I guess another story to transition quickly is the Houston Rockets letting go of Steven Silas. I think that like right there, voice of respect in the locker room. I think that like, very, very big example of how that can go in the wrong direction. Even though, I mean, in my opinion, he may have gotten a raw deal in a lot of ways. When you look at a like organization that seems to definitely be tanking, it's like, how can you preach winning habits when we all know what the like real goal is? So
I get what you're saying in regards to Steven Silas, and that was something that I paid attention to, as well as Dwayne Casey, who got the axe out in Detroit. I think those guys, especially Steven, when he came to Houston, he thought that he was going to have a roster with an all-star backcourt and a chance to compete for an NBA championship, if not be one of the top 4 teams in the West. And as soon as he arrived, James Harden basically said, hey, I want it out. And from that moment forward, after getting his wish granted to him and moving to Brooklyn prior to going to Philly, where he now is, Steven had a real rough hand. And it went from, championship aspirations to, well, we got to get some young pieces in here and see what we can do within the next couple of years to build a somewhat respectable roster. And yeah, I mean, I think he tried his best with those group of young guys to teach them winning habits and traits. But as we all know, everybody ain't when everybody ain't on the same page, disaster can strike. And in Houston, I think the next coach that Ralph Stone will be looking for is a guy that can help take these young guys to the next level in some type of way. And I think player development is going to be extremely important. I believe that John Lucas more than likely will continue to have a spot on that staff if they work hand in hand with the new head coach that they hire. But I would expect for the new head coach that comes down to Houston and joins the Rockets organization to be someone that's well experienced, if not a veteran head coach that's been there and done that. something that I think this young group needs desperately, in spite of the nucleus of talent that they have around them, which on a night-to-night basis, depending on whether or not they want to play hard for 48 minutes or not, can show.
And play as a team too.
Yeah.
The guys show the talent individually.
Yes, they
it's
do.
It's never a cohesive collective effort. Like what you will see with an OKC, what you will see with the Sacramento, where it's like guys like team ability is standing out.
Mm-hmm. For myself, things that stood out to me is Brian Dutcher at San Diego State University, a guy who for 18 years put in the leg work as an assistant under Steve Fisher at the University of Michigan, played a big part in recruiting those guys from the Fab Five, such as Chris Webber, Jalen Rose, Jimmy King, and Ray Jackson, as well as Kawhi Leonard to San Diego State at a time when he went over there with Steve Fisher. They was just coming off of like a 4-win season. And under his tutelage, he grew a lot. He was always an elite recruiter. But once Steve left, the program at San Diego State after getting the axe at Michigan, it opened up the door for Dutcher, who prior to the pandemic, a lot of people may forget this, but he had an undefeated team in the Mountain West led by Malachi Flynn. And as a result of that, hitting the country, they weren't able to compete for a Mountain West championship, let alone an NCAA tournament, championship, or even make a run to the Sweet 16 or Elite 8. Well, this year he had a group of guys, mostly transfers, who played at an extremely high level, won the Mountain West, and they went on an incredible run. And I have to give them credit for that, because it's so many guys in Brian Dutcher's position who usually never get that shot as an assist, as a head coach, rather, at a D1 program, be it a mid-major or a high major. They never get that shot, but he did, and he's managed to make the most of it and got a group of young guys to play hard for him, man. And that was just cool to see. And he's a very humble guy, didn't really want to take a lot of credit for the success, didn't really do a lot of interviews. And when he did, he was always highlighting his players. So it was just cool to see him getting that shine 30 years, from the glory days of UM basketball. And then on the other hand, as far as NBA stuff is going on and concerned, I'm just trying to figure out what the hell is going on in Minnesota right now. You got guys fighting on the sideline, and I understand, you playing for a playing spot, but like Rudy Gobert and Kyle Anderson getting into it, and then Jaden McDaniels, in frustration, punching a wall, which as a result, he ends up breaking his right hand, breaking bones in his right hand, and he's going to miss the playing game against the Lakers for the 7th seed this upcoming Tuesday night. And oh, by the way, Rudy Gobert, for his actions in the incident with Kyle Anderson, is suspended for that game. And for a team that we've always had a lot of questions about, showing some signs of promise a season ago, doing what they did this past offseason, giving up all that draft capital to get Rudy Gobert next to Karl Anthony Towns in an experiment that we don't really know if that can work or it can't, because Cat's been out the lineup for the majority of the year. He's just not returning to the fold. And in spite of Anthony Edwards' dominance during that stretch, we have not seen this team fully whole or healthy. And when you put all this stuff that's going on all together with it, it's like, what is this team's identity moving forward? What is their future looking like? And that's something to monitor, especially when you have a star like Anthony Edwards, a young star, might I add, who's only getting better and better by the year in his 3rd season out of Georgia.
Yeah. I mean, like, to touch on the Rudy Gobert situation, that's a disconnect right there from management and the players. I mean, there was statements from Anthony Edwards the season previous pretty much saying like, hey, man, nobody fears Rudy Gobert at the rim.
I remember that.
He said Kristaps Porzingis was more of a threat in the paint than Rudy Gobert. and
Mm-hmm.
months later you trade for him. And I believe the biggest thing, honestly, for that team, Mike Conley, I feel like that was the type of move they needed to make in the offseason. It wasn't to go get Rudy Gobert. I get it. You want to, the paint defense, but you have Karl Anthony Towns, and he kind of creates a issue as far as the guarding the 4 and the 5. He's great offensively. It's a matchup in his favor offensively, but defensively, I understand you want to get Rudy, but the Mike Conley move was probably more significant as far as progress for this team. And like Kyle Anderson, Torian Prince with the push on Rudy. I mean,
Yeah,
I just don't think the team overall, like, it's not a. They just don't like Rudy. Like, let's just be like, just keep it simple. They don't like Rudy. They kind of know that because of the trade, because everything that was given up, that like the relationship is forced. It's gonna have to like work itself out. But I mean, McDaniels breaking his hand is a big blow, because I honestly believe
major.
that. Because I believe honestly, like they had a better chance without Rudy in this game. You get to play more up and down.
That's true. And he's not clogging the paint, which has been the number one issue when he's been in the lineup with Karl Anthony Towns, because it takes away from the driving lanes in which Anthony Edwards is able to utilize when he has the ball in his hand. And he's so superb at doing, which we saw last year in the first round against Memphis in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I want to see Anthony Edwards unleashed in the playoffs, in the play-in game. Like, let's start there. I want to see him unleashed. I want to see him play to his max capacity, and clearly with Rudy there, it's been an issue all season, so we'll see.
I feel you. But just want to move on to everything that transpired in March Madness. Last time we did a show, we were looking forward to the Sweet 16. Now it's all completed. Florida Atlantic, San Diego State, Miami, they all respectively punched tickets to the Final Four for the first time in their program's history. But in the end, the program with the most experience among all the challengers, and the only one left in the field with a national title, would prove to be victorious yet once again and march their way back to the top, as UConn would knock off San Diego State to cut down the nets in Houston for the 5th time in program history since 1999. With their most recent national title, UConn became the first program since North Carolina to win a national championship in 4 consecutive decades, as the Huskies now boast as many titles as Duke and Indiana in the process, as the program in stores currently has more national championship banners in their building than the likes of Kansas, Louisville, and Villanova. So I got to ask you, Torrence, even though I know college basketball is not what it used to be when we was coming up as kids, by far, the game has changed completely. The old guard coaches such as Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Boeheim, they're all gone. With all of that being said, though, should the Huskies, a program that has won national championships in the American Conference and the Big East Conference with 3 different head coaches, might I add, should they now be considered as a true blue blood in college basketball?
Well, quick question. Who do you consider the true blue bloods?
In my opinion, I would say Duke for sure, Kansas. I would also say Kentucky. I would say North Carolina, and I would say UCLA.
See, if you consider Duke a blue blood, then yes, but I don't consider Duke a blue blood either. I honestly don't. A part of being a blue blood to me,
Okay,
like, you're like the NBA success plays a part in it for me personally.
I got you.
I'm more of an NBA fan anyway.
I know.
When you look at UConn, no top 75 players but one, Ray Allen. Only one Hall of Famer, Ray Allen. So I mean, yes, you're a great college basketball program, but blue blood, when you speak about like the UCLAs, the Kentuckys, the Kansas, I mean, we're talking about MVPs, Hall of Famers, guys who have statues, you know. Blue blood kind of, you're pretty much kind of describing something that's lasted for a long, long time, like through many different eras. Even when you speak of Duke, we're talking about Coach K's time. We're not talking about a time previous to him. We're not talking about, I mean, I guess you can say now there's kind of like this, like the post Coach K era, but it's really brief so far, so we can't really speak too much to that. Nah, I know I don't consider them a blue blood. For the same reasons I don't consider Duke one. Duke is the college basketball program, but as far as like the blue bloods, the true elite, you know, when you, a blue blood, even when you speak about like in history, you know, like when you meet a blue blood family, a person from a blue blood family, that is like a lifetime connection. That's gonna get you further in life than any piece of paper, any dollar amount, anything. Just because you go to Duke and UConn doesn't mean you're gonna be set up for great basketball success. Ultimately, you'll have a great college run, but ultimately, it's just a great college experience.
I never thought of it like that. When you include the NBA players and their track records from these programs. Yeah,
Yeah, I
Duke,
mean,
Duke, as we know, it's been a lot of promising players that come out of Duke, but if you're really looking at like NBA success, I think the two most talented players that come out of Duke were Grant Hill and Kyrie Irving. Everybody else was
and
pretty
listen
much
to
either role players or guys that just didn't pan out.
listen to the word you use to describe. You used like the most talented. You know, like everybody's producing like amazing talent, but it's like, look, Michael Jordan, that's a North Carolina product. You think about what he's accomplished. You get what I'm saying?
No, I totally
Will
get what you're
Chamberlain
saying.
with Kansas. So
Exactly.
like when you look at a UConn, like I said, you're talking about Ray Allen, Ben Gordon. Emeka Okafor is the highest selected pick from UConn at number 2
Mm-hmm.
in their history. You know, current NBA guys, we have Andre Drummond.
Yeah.
You
Andre
know,
Drummond is really the main one holding it down now that, Kemba's kind of fluctuating in and out of the league, who had great success in the league. But yeah, I get
because
what you're saying.
even when you look at the recent Duke hype, I would say from the 2010s, like you said, you got Kyrie, Jason Tatum, Brandon Ingram, Zion, and we got big questions about all of those guys still. Like as far as what Duke produces in the NBA, like that has to be a part of the resume of what makes you a blue blood, in my opinion. Like Kentucky's history is endless.
That's true.
Even before the Calipari run, like the Kentucky here, I mean, Pat Riley is a product of Kentucky. Like it runs deep. With UCLA, I mean, come on, like Kareem's record just got broke 2 months ago. He's probably the most accomplished basketball player of all time. And we still talking about guys like Bill Walton going to that school, like right after him.
Yeah, I mean, we UCLA, Kansas, North Carolina. I've always felt like if you went to any of those three schools and you did work, you were guaranteed not only a spot in the league, but even if you didn't pan out in the league, you was damn near guaranteed a job in the league as an exec. And I would even include Duke
Head
in that.
coaches.
Yeah, that's true as well. And the only reason why I include Duke in that, as much as they don't boast an NBA roster compared to those three schools, is something about that school that's prestigious enough where guys, even if they don't pan out in the league, Torrance, they do get jobs. Prime example of that is Danny Ferry. If we gonna talk about blue blood, I know that they don't feature the players that those three schools do, because to me those are the big three: UCLA, Kansas, and Carolina.
Right, exactly. And I think like that space has to be respected, because even when you speak on the coach and the executive side, I mean, it's like there's not as many people from Duke as there are Kansas and UCLA and Kentucky, even like across like those spaces in the league. So
no, that's true, because if you go to Kansas, you got Larry Brown, you have Paul Pierce, you have Joel Embiid, You have Andrew Wiggins. You have guys like Danny Manning who had success in the league prior to knee injuries. Kansas has a rich elite history within college basketball as well as the NBA that I would even say that UConn doesn't have it this time. But if I'm solely going off of college ball and what they've done in the last 25 years, I think it warrants a little respect because they 5-0 in national title games.
And like when you think about UConn, you think of them as a Big East school, right?
Absolutely.
So you think UConn's more prestigious than Georgetown or Syracuse?
They don't have the NBA talent that those schools have both in the last 30 plus years.
But just the word prestige, when you just think of like the class of that conference, you think of UConn immediately?
Within the last 20 to 25 plus years, I do. If you're going from like
I don't think that year, I don't think year in and year out, there's an expectation of what UConn basketball is and what it has to be. I just think that
I would agree with you there.
I just think that every few years they pop up with another talented roster, and the talent pool at the time benefits them, and they take advantage of it every time. You can't knock them for that. There is a level of consistency there, but there is like, well, part like I said, the blue blood, when you go by that definition, there's an expectation that comes along with that as well. Without expectation and standard, I mean, like, what is there to live up to? They're like blue blood, like you have a name to live up to. Women's, UConn women's basketball, like, you see what I'm saying? There's an expectation, there's a standard. You see what I mean? You don't even have to talk about it. You just know what it is.
Yeah. Well, I don't question UConn's women's status at all. You know, like those they're up there in that regard, in that realm and arena. But I think it's an interesting question to ask because anytime you hear people saying that they have more national titles than Kansas, and you consider the fact that they won all of these national titles within a quarter of a century period, I do think that that's impressive. Yes, they don't boast the NBA players that those programs boast, even Louisville and Villanova to a degree. But at the same time, I do feel like right now, they're a blue blood, and I do think they have to be respected by the way that they've done it. Anytime you're able to do it with three different coaches, Jim Calhoun, Kevin Ollie, and now Dan Hurley, you know, that's remarkable in itself.
No one has any expectation about that program going into next season. That, like, right there is the answer. People are gonna always wonder, how is North Carolina basketball doing? How is UCLA doing? What's going on with Kansas? Duke, because they've been the primetime team of the past couple of decades, but I mean, once again, I look at Duke like, you guys are in a rivalry supposedly with North Carolina. So you guys got a lot of juice and like backing up and support from a true blue blood by association. You see what I'm saying? Same thing with UConn. It's the association of being in the Big East and somehow making it, through the loops. I mean, we're in between New York City and Boston.
Yeah.
Like, so there's an East Coast bias to the coverage with that team. But like I said, 5 championships, can't take it away. Great program. Nobody cares.
I was kind of shocked to see that they had that many national titles, if not more. Well, now more than Kansas, Louisville, and Villanova. And I do believe that in the wake of their recent success, that it has to be discussed. Now that you bring up everything that you brought up, though, with the NBA players and the lack thereof, even though they've had some, but they haven't had any as decorated as Ray, that makes me keep a fresh eye now out on a guy like Jordan Hawkins, who just recently declared for the 2023 NBA draft and is one of the top shooting guards in the country.
Oh, well, they'll produce you a good starting shooting guard in the NBA now. Like we're not going to take that away. We got Ray Allen, Rip Hamilton,
Ben
Jeremy
Gordon.
Lamb, Ben Gordon, Karan Butler.
Mm-hmm.
They'll get you a good guard now. Not gonna take nothing away from them, but see, once again, that's something they're probably more known for than being a blue blood. Like, hey, man, like they produce great guards from UConn. Bigs can't really speak too much to. You got Emeka Okafor, Andre Drummond, and then of course the infamous Hashim Thabit.
They got one coming along the way next year to keep an eye on. And his name is Donovan Clingan. He can run the floor exceptionally well. He's tremendous as a rim protector and a guy who, for him coming off the bench, only playing like 15 to 20 minutes at best, he could have easily started over Adama Sanogo, who was the most improved player in the tournament, or the most outstanding player of the Final Four, excuse me, Adama Sanogo, because that was the thing that made this year's UConn team so unique to me. You usually see them win it with guard play. They won it with their bigs, and they dominated.
Yeah, they did. They definitely did. So shout out to the Huskies. You know, a true blue blood would have brought in a bigger audience. But, you know, hey.
It's funny you say that because I just saw the numbers from like the viewership of the national championship game. And San Diego State versus UConn was the lowest rated national championship game from a TV standpoint. It was lower than the 2018 national championship between Michigan and Villanova.
You don't even know any UConn fans.
You know, it's funny. I actually don't. It's one I came across during the tournament across Twitter, but I never really knew he was like a diehard UConn fan until this tournament came about.
Yeah, I bet.
That's a good point. I don't know too many UConn fans.
No standards. No standards. A Lakers fan has something to say about everything, every season, every game. Cowboys fans, Yankees fans.
Yeah, and you can say the same for like a North Carolina fan, a basketball or Alabama football fan. I totally get what you're saying. But I want to move away from the college basketball talk and the conversation that me and Torrence had surrounding UConn into some NBA related affairs out in Dallas surrounding the Mavericks, who lost back-to-back games at the hands of the Charlotte Hornets a couple weeks ago, in spite of being a 16-point favorite against them at home. Posted a 7-18 record during the final 2 months of the regular season, falling from fourth place in the Western Conference standings to completely out of the playoff picture, as Dallas decided to sit several starters in their last 2 games, beginning with last Friday's home loss against the Bulls, which led to the Mavs being eliminated out of play-in contention, despite reports earlier in the week that Luka Doncic would look to play in spite of a thigh injury as long as the team had a shot at making the playoffs. Mavs now have the 10th best lottery odds after dropping their last 2 games of the regular season, after missing the playoffs for the first time since Luka's rookie year, and currently find themselves under league investigation for decisions and game conduct made in their penultimate game of the regular season against the Bulls. You know, Torrence, this is a team that me and you done had a lot of conversations about privately. A team that, you know, we've said amongst ourselves, they get the benefit of the doubt by a lot of people in the public. And I think that's a byproduct of what Mark Cuban did during his early days as an owner of the Mavericks franchise. Over time, he's become, let's just call it what it is, cheap, with how he manages and maintains his roster. What do you make of Dallas not only being investigated by the league for decisions made by the front office down the home stretch, but their downward spiral out west in the wake of the Kyrie Irving trade? And the thing I find interesting before you answer is that I don't think this investigation happens if not for the ramifications with that 10th best lottery odds in this year's draft, because they would have owed that pick to the Knicks had it fell outside of the top 10.
I mean, as far as the investigation, I mean, I just look at that like, hey, that's league business. I'm gonna let the league do league things. Now, like the situation at hand, let's start at the top. Mark Cuban. I mean, we've never really got to truly assess who he is as an owner. I mean, when he first came into the league, it was the shenanigans. He's young, he's brash, he's getting into it with David Stern, he's sitting courtside, baseline at the games, he's getting into it with the refs. Then he turns into the guy that takes care of his players the best. Great locker rooms, great away locker rooms, charter jets. But the one sneaky factor of all of it through this whole entire run, he only likes to keep one star on the team.
Yeah.
He ain't paying two. He ain't paying two players. Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash. The Mavericks were one of the jokes of the 90s. You get Dirk and Steve Nash. 50 plus win season after 50 plus win season. You let go of Steve Nash. Get to the finals, but then it's like, okay, you lost against Dwayne Wade and Shaquille O'Neal. For many years in the Western Conference, it was Kobe and Shaq. It was Tim Duncan, Parker, and Ginobili. Even the Sacramento Kings, I mean, Chris Webber, Peja Stojakovic, surrounded by Vlade Divac and Mike Bibby.
Mm-hmm.
You win the title in 2011, and you let Tyson Chandler go in free agency. He goes on to become the defensive player of the year for the New York Knicks. And literally, 12 years later, 11, 12 years later, you let Jalen Brunson leave after you guys make a Western Conference Finals, finally with your new star, Luka Doncic, and you let his second best player walk out again. It's the third time he's done this. Everything we see right now with the Dallas Mavericks is like a byproduct of Mark Cuban. I don't blame Kyrie Irving. I don't blame Jason Kidd. Luka Doncic, I mean, you could give him blame for things like his body language, not being great on the defensive end. Does he actually want to share the ball with his teammates? But, I mean, all in all, I mean, even if he was willing to share the ball with his teammates, even if Kyrie Irving did play great, even if Jason Kidd had a better relationship with, let's say, a Christian Wood, for instance, Mark Cuban's if he sees success with his team, he's gonna let something valuable go. That's what he's shown over the past 20 years. That's what he's shown. You know, so hey, you guys want to have an extra asset in the offseason by way of that pick. You don't want to like give the Knicks another victory over you guys as far as transactions go. Hey, go right ahead. But Luka Doncic, I don't see him going anywhere. I don't see Mark Cuban letting him go anywhere. So all of the talk about the trade, is he gonna act like he's not letting Luka Doncic go? He's gonna keep his one superstar. He's gonna ride Luka like he did Dirk. Maybe one of these years we can fit you a title in there. But long-term paying two players, I don't see it. I don't believe they're offering Kyrie Irving a max for 4 years.
It's funny you bring that up when you talk about Kyrie Irving, because in my eyes, Kyrie Irving went from a guy who his leverage wasn't really all that high when he went to Dallas. And now I think it's higher than ever in Dallas. Because when you just bought up what you bought up and you talk about how they let Jalen Brunson go, a guy who they could have kept at a much cheaper price than what New York paid for him in free agency, if only they had just offered him the extension. Because he said he would have signed it with no problem. But when they didn't offer it, and the Knicks came with what they came with, it was too little too late. And like his dad told him, who, as we know, is an assistant on Tibbs' staff in New York, you better take that money and run. And he's done that. And look at what the Knicks have become. They went from having a bottom 10 ranked offense to one of the top offenses in the league with Jalen Brunson, a guy who really should have been an all-star this season. But bringing it back to Dallas, what I make of the investigation is I just think it's hilarious to me. They're not the first team to tank, and they're not the last, but it was the way that they did it that made it hilarious. You act as though you are going to compete for a championship by going out here and acquiring Kyrie Irving at the trade deadline. I understand guys get hurt. Kyrie missed some games. Luka missed some games. Tim Hardaway Jr. missed some games post All-Star break. But this was a roster that even in spite of you trading away your best defensive wing player in Dorian Finney-Smith, who was also one of your top catch-and-shoot three-point options, in spite of trading away him and giving up all that draft capital, you got Luka Doncic, man. The man guarantees you a top 10 offense by himself. And the fact that you can't even finish above 500 is telling. And you brought up the relationship between Christian Wood and Jason Kidd. I don't know what it was, but it got so personal that it was times when you could just see watching their games that Luka and C. Wood had a nice 1-2 pairing in the pick and roll game. But Jason Kidd, he just refused to ride it out with him in crunch time situations. And he would always point out the defense. But as you alluded to with Luka, you got Luka in there. He's not one of the best defenders on the team. If anything, you trying to hide him in your defensive coverages. If you can hide Luka, I'm not saying that you can hide Christian Wood, but like you were playing JaVale McGee over him, who wasn't really giving you much of anything this season. I don't know how that makes sense. I don't know how that makes sense at all. And they made a plan where they basically said, the hell with defense, we're going to go all in on offense. And I think that that's what led to their demise as a group this year. And when neither one of Luka and Kyrie could play together with one another due to injuries, that didn't help the case either.
Well, as far as like the Christian Wood element of this situation, I mean, Jason Kidd did get them to like a top 10 defense towards the end of last season.
He did, but his personnel was different.
His personnel was different, but I mean, a lot of us agree to a certain extent, defense is effort and communication and awareness.
No doubt.
And even on the offensive end, when Christian Wood touches the ball, what is he going to do? He's going to shoot it.
Yeah.
He ain't giving that ball up.
He's going to gun. Yeah, he's a gunner for sure.
So, I mean, I expect the same mentality on defense. I'm going to worry about who I'm supposed to worry about. I'm not worrying about any, like, backdoor cuts. I'm not worrying about any side screens, none of that. I'm just worried about what I'm supposed to worry about. It's not good to have. And he wasn't there last year. As far as getting Kyrie in a trade, I mean, you got to look at it like this. You're picking up a distressed asset. He has his ceiling is higher than the guys you traded. Spencer Dinwiddie, Dorian Finney-Smith. Yeah, it hurts you in the short term, but you can find a guy that's 6'6", 6'7" to play defense and hit a few threes next to Luka Doncic. I think you can find those guys in abundance on the free agency. I mean, Dallas is going to build their team on the fringes anyway. Like I said, that's what Mark Cuban does. So if you have an opportunity to pick up a Kyrie Irving and you still keep a Luka Doncic, man, why not? You can build the pieces around it, and maybe that's what they're hoping for with this pick, whether it's through a trade, because I think that's what's most likely going to happen. They're going to trade that pick for something like a vet,
and they could do that. They could definitely do that. And which brings me to my next question in regards to the Mavericks. What changes do you think need to be made from a roster standpoint in order for the Mavs to make a march back to the playoffs in 2024? I know you say that you don't see Kyrie being there long term, but I feel like after this year and with them struggling without a point guard besides Luka to take the offensive load, off of him from time to time, I think Kyrie, I feel like they got to make him an offer that he can't refuse. I feel like they have to. I know it's not Mark Cuban behavior to do so, but with this new CBA that's set to kick in next season, which we're gonna get into following this conversation, he don't have no excuse.
See, here's the thing. I think Kyrie's leverage like depends on what else happens in the playoffs. I mean, if Phoenix goes out in the first round and that rumor comes to like have some truth to it that maybe him and KD want to team up in Phoenix, who's if Phoenix wants him, conversation changes. If the Lakers flame out and LeBron looks at D'Angelo Russell like, nah, this not gonna work, and D'Lo's a free agent, maybe we get a sign and trade with Dallas.
We've been talking about that, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not just certain that like on either side that like the leverage is totally swinging in like Dallas's favor or Kyrie's favor. I honestly feel like we're gonna have to see what happens like during the postseason.
Wow. So I mean, I could see a sign and trade between Dallas and Phoenix, as we talked about before, where you have Kyrie going to Phoenix in return for DeAndre Ayton, because to me, the two biggest weaknesses in Dallas right now, they need a wing and they also need a big. And if Kyrie is to leave, they can't afford to let him walk away without conducting a sign and trade to alleviate one of those two weaknesses. They can't. Like, he just came up and leave and they don't get nothing in return.
Well, you say that, but did they get anything for Steve Nash?
No. And that's why I'm saying you can't make that same mistake twice.
Wait. No, what do you mean? They didn't get anything for Tyson Chandler. That's twice. They didn't get anything for Jalen Brunson. That's 3 times. They didn't. It's not beyond the like realm of possibility that Kyrie Irving like just leaves the Dallas Mavericks and they get nothing for him. It's like 100% on the table.
Oh, for sure. I'm not saying that it's not on the table at all. It's on the table. That would be very bad to me. I mean, that would be very bad.
The last time Mark Cuban like got a deal done with the Mavericks, it wasn't a good deal anyway. Chandler Parsons.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like that's what I'm saying. Like Mark Cuban got a lot of L's up on that board.
Yeah, and he's paid money to guys. Big money to guys that didn't pan out for him. Even in his early days, you go back to Rafe LaFrentz.
And you know my thing too about the owners. But when you look at it like a business, I mean, can he do better than that 2011 run with Dallas? I mean, that forever solidified the name, the Dallas Mavericks, Dirk Nowitzki as a statue outside. I mean, like, like Mark Cuban, he's won. He's lived his dream already. I don't know if he has the same hunger and desire to just put this like great situation around Luka Doncic. As long as Luka Doncic is wearing a Dallas Mavericks uniform, I think Mark Cuban is fine.
And that may be true. But something I want to point out also happened in the wake of Dallas missing the playoffs this year for the first time in 4 seasons. For the first time since 1980 and 1981, there will be no Texas team in the NBA playoffs. And when you consider our lifetimes and seeing all the dominant runs that these teams in the state of Texas have made, from the Spurs to the Mavs with Dirk, Steve Nash, Chicago's own and Maywood native Michael Finley, Antoine Walker and those guys, and then the Rockets having the years that they had during the James Harden era, going to playoffs, for 8 straight years. That's telling. And I think that sports radio stations in the Dallas-Fort Worth area and beyond are going to be hot, and they're going to have a right to question Mark Cuban and his commitment to the Dallas Mavericks long term. We know he has a lot of business ventures. And like you said, he has won the ultimate game. But when you have a guy like Luka Doncic, who is only 24 years old, set to enter his 6th season in the NBA after reaching the Western Conference Finals a season ago, and you're not seeking to build a winner around this guy in that state, man, that's a bad look. That's a bad look.
Dirk won the MVP in 2007 and didn't compete for the title again until like 4 to 5 years later.
But they still had playoff teams, though, Torrence.
I mean, Dallas is a play. This is a playoff team. They chose not to make the playoffs. This is a playoff team. Like they're literally a playoff team. They chose not to make the playoffs. So, I mean, from that regard, they're still like right on schedule. That's what I mean. See, as fans and outsiders, we see a great talent. Well, we see a great talent like a Luka Doncic, and we like want the world for it. You know, we want to see it utilized to its max potential. But also, I mean, I think me and you've had this conversation. Luka Doncic, I mean, he's not like this superstar that everybody wants him to be. I mean, he's a designated hitter. This is all work coming on the offensive end of the floor. Or like when people are comparing him to guys like, I see the stats, him against a young LeBron. You know, some of the comparisons offensively with like a Michael Jordan. You want to compare him to guys like Giannis in the league now. Hey, those guys are all-time greats on defense as well. Not just good defenders or can be hit well. These are all-time great defenders. Like Luka is gonna have to become. He's gonna be able to at least have to guard like your middle-class wing, but he on defensively he's not bringing it, and that would elevate the team a whole lot. When he put more effort in last season, they thrived.
Yeah, I agree. And he's also going to have to learn not only to be a decent level defender, he's going to have to learn how to be willing to come off the ball should he be paired with an elite guard beside him, especially if Kyrie returns. You just can't stand around, and just wait for the ball to come to you. And in my opinion, Luka suffers from the same issue that a guy that I covered did in the prime of his career early on, and that's James Harden. Both of them had the same issues, whether it was with their weight, whether it's with the attention to detail on the defensive end. Harden, in my opinion, he's the better defender in the sense and on the post, and when he puts his attention to it, he can play solid defense when he wants to. It's just a matter of how he feels. But in Luka's case, you don't see that. Like last year I believe it was game 4 of the Western Conference Finals, when they avoided getting swept by Golden State. That was the most active I had ever seen Luka Doncic off the ball as a cutter in my entire life. And the only reason why he was active that way is because he knew if he didn't move, he was not touching the ball. And that has to happen continuously with him moving forward in his career, especially if he's going to try to make this pairing with Kyrie work, a pairing that he says that he would like to see, happen for the eventual future. Like he said, he want Kyrie back. Well, if you want Kyrie back, it's going to require you to make some tweaks and changes to your game, not only on the defensive end, as you made your points, Torrence, but on the offensive end as well. Because he's one of the most ball-dominant players I've seen in the last 25 years outside of LeBron and James Harden in his prime.
Yep, and those guys had more success. But
yeah, they did.
When you hear the media talk, hey man, he's the second coming. He's the best. He needs get him everything. It's like, hey, I love Luka, but
I do too.
I'm about guys who like do it on both ends when you want to talk about them at that level.
I can respect that. I respect that. Honestly, we had our conversations about it. We know the media love Luka. They love him.
Honestly, like, the ironic thing is like probably the best fit for him is like the type of guy me and you used to say about James Harden. You got James Harden, a Chris Paul, a Westbrook. You even got him a big, but like the thing he really needed was that small forward. If Dallas were able to get maybe a OG Anunoby, a Mikal Bridges, or hey, like I said, once again, this postseason, who knows? A Paul George may be available. So, it's a lot they can do.
For sure. And it'll be intriguing to see what they do going forward, because that organization right now is in a flux, and it's interesting to see what is going to transpire over the next several months over there, especially with a player who many consider is a top 10 talent in the league on a nightly basis. But I want to move on into discussing this new CBA deal that the NBA and the NBA Players Association reached tentatively for the next several years. And once officially drawn up, it's expected to bring full-on labor peace to the league through the rest of the decade, as the new deal includes a mutual opt-out after the 6th year, according to Woj of ESPN. The key elements within the CBA will be the NBA putting a halt on the ability of the league's highest spending teams, such as the Clippers and the Warriors, who have repeatedly ran up salary and luxury tax spending on an annual basis in an effort to add the best complementary talent besides their stars on their respective rosters, in addition to implementing a second salary cap apron for teams who are $17.5 million over the luxury tax line. As teams who go over the following mark will not have access to the taxpayer mid-level exception in free agency within the next couple of years. And had those changes been in place a summer ago, guys such as Golden State's Dante DiVincenzo, Milwaukee's Joe Ingles, and Boston's Danilo Gallinari would not have been able to sign with their respective franchises last offseason in free agency, as the new CBA is placing an emphasis on increasing opportunities for teams across the board who are either above or below the salary cap. As we know, the in-season tournament could also be on the way as early as next season as part of the new CBA deal, as the league is also adding an eligibility requirement for individual honors such as all NBA and MVP awards in an effort to curb the load management trend, as players must play in at least 65 games or more in order to be considered for the following honors. The NBA and Players Association also agreed to increase the upper limits on contract extensions from a 120% increase on current deals to 140% as part of the new agreement. That is expected to benefit players such as Jaylen Brown, who could go from what was $140 million extension to, I believe, somewhere near the ballpark of close to $200 million. So, Torrence, what's your overall thoughts on the new CBA set to come to the league next year? And based on what you read thus far, what's been reported, which side do you believe it benefits the most? We know the owner's going to eat regardless, but based off what you read, do you think it benefits the players?
Based on what I've read, I don't see, honestly, there is like this deal, like this new deal that they came up with, it's really not like significant, honestly, if you ask me personally, as far as the changes. Like, let's just start at the top, like the salary adjustments, right? We knew the new TV contracts was coming. We know guys are getting bigger deals regardless. Like the new deals are going to be outrageous once like the TV side gets put down. So, I mean, okay, everybody gets a nice 20% raise on the month. That's cool. That's to be expected. As far as the mid-level exceptions with the luxury tax teams, I mean, we got Golden State as an example of a success, and we have the Clippers as an example of a failure. So, do these those pickups, like, do they really matter in the grand scheme? Because even every year we look at the buyout market, and it doesn't turn out to be that significant in the grand scheme of things. Even like when you look at when the Warriors picked up DeMarcus Cousins one year in free agency, you know, if a guy wants to go play on a title contender and he really wants it bad enough, he's gonna just take the vet minimum. You know, there's nothing going
That's
on
true.
against that. You know, so I don't really see any like big issue in that regard. The 65 game thing, once again, I think was that the Clippers. I think they answered that question on how guys are going to deal with that going forward. Hey, Kawhi, you're going to play in the first quarter. You sit down. So I don't really see like the 65 game, it's gonna make guys play more. No, the way we load manage is gonna change. You're gonna see guys playing a lot more first half, first quarters, and sitting down. Especially, because teams have relationships with certain players. Like, hey, look, we're gonna give you this money, we're gonna make sure we look out on both sides. But we still need you to rest. The in-season tournament that none of us asked for. I've tried my best to like read into it to like get proper understanding of it. It's cool, but I don't think an extra $500,000 is helping anybody but the guys on the end of the bench in the league, and they're not playing. So are the guys at the top really incentivized to care that much? Earlier I thought of an idea. I said, hey, if the team that wins the tournament, they, along with the top 2 seeds in each conference, they get to pick their first round opponent. I think something like that would have like added more incentive to guys to go out here and be like, look, we gotta, we gonna win this cup. Not only we gonna clinch us a automatic playoff berth, but we also get to pick our first round opponent. I think now you get guys, okay, top 2 seeds, the top seed in each conference, East and West, and then that third team, though, they get to pick their first round opponents from the play-in games. I think that would make things a lot more significant. I don't think that $500,000 is gonna make Steph Curry try any harder.
Oh no. I mean, we know that. I mean, think about the All-Star game that we saw this year. The winning team got a cut of money, but the effort never changed. Like the guys were like, whoa, I got to just play for this All-Star money because, this prize pool is just so significant. So, yeah, I don't think any extra money is going to incentivize them. That would be interesting, though, to see the winner of the in-season tournament get a chance to pick who they would face in the first round of the playoffs. That would create a whole lot of intrigue to the in-season tournament.
And like last thing too on the CBA, I know a lot of people are talking about the changes with the All NBA teams as well.
Yeah.
As far as positionless, I also don't really see that as gonna I don't see much changing with that either. I think it's gonna still even out between the backcourt and the front court, because right now I think we're looking at almost like a big man renaissance in the league. When it was the Dwight and DeAndre Jordan days, yeah, it was a little light. But now we're talking about Jokic. We're talking about Embiid. We're talking about AD. We got guys on the second and third tier like Jaren Jackson. We got Evan Mobley coming up. And then, come on, we got Victor Wembanyama coming. Sabonis. So those spots are going to get filled by the bigs. It's just going to turn into a front court and a back court type of thing. And I mean, if you're the guys voting, or if you guys are like real fans of the game, I think you're naturally gonna make that happen on an All NBA team. No one should be posting a ballot with 5 guards.
No, I don't think we'll see that either. But I do believe that having a positionless All NBA team benefits a specific player who was the runner-up in the NBA MVP race the last 2 seasons. Yet he never finished with first team All NBA honors because of that. And that's Joel Embiid. If it's any player it benefits, it's him. And in my opinion, when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is basically just the Joel Embiid rule, because you just had a guy who won the scoring title a season ago and finished as runner-up for the second straight season. Yet Jason Tatum made first team All NBA over him due to the fact that he played the forward position, and they consider Embiid by classification to be a center.
And like the biggest example of this, as far as like the problem sometimes with the All NBA team, was when LeBron came in second and Defensive Player of the Year in 2013.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
But Marc Gasol wasn't even on first team All Defense; he was second team.
He was second team All Defense and won Defensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, but he won the award. Yeah, I just think we shouldn't care so much about these awards.
We shouldn't, I agree, but at the same time,
But
I think the reason why we do care about them, no Torrance, is because we see the travesties that get committed, and it makes us question and ponder who in the hell has the privileges and the rights to vote on these awards, because they get them wrong so much, or they commit these blunders every 5 to 7 years, to where you like, what are we really watching and what are we really evaluating? Because we solely can't just be basing it on the numbers. And then you want to know who's voting because you know how in this media lane, everybody is buddy. Everybody's buddy. And then you have these biases where if you got a reporter in Denver, he want to give you 150 reasons why Nikola Jokic should win it. Then you got the reporter in Philadelphia trying to give you 150 reasons why Joel Embiid should win it. Same in Milwaukee with Giannis and other players in their respective markets. So that's why sometimes it gets tricky. And then the national media, they love to flip-flop. They'll sell you one star, but then it's another star over here that's doing twice as much work and more, but oh no, we're not going to show you him. So that's why I think it's become a disconnect. And I think that's why people care so much about the awards. I don't buy, or I don't place as much stock in the MVPs in the manner that I once did. But I find myself asking, as a fan of the game and as a follower of the game, what is the criteria now? Because once upon a time, if you had the best record in the NBA or led your team to the best record every single year, you were the MVP. Now we've changed it, or we switched the pendulum a little bit. And I think it started with Russell Westbrook when it was the year of the triple-double. You know, so it's a lot. It's a lot with it. But my overall thoughts, as far as the new CBA is concerned, is that basketball, or the NBA as we know it, has officially become the Americanized version of soccer. It's officially become that. More money is coming to the sport as a result of not only the TV deals, but as we know and was just reported, the NBA just set an attendance record this season. So that's good for them. But it's turning into the new soccer, because you have all these stipulations, all these requirements in this in-season tournament. I just want to see it before I issue any comment on it. I just got to see it. I agree with you, Torrence. I don't think $500,000 is just going to make a guy say, oh, well, you know what? I got to play my ass off and get 40 tonight. No, it's not. And I'm wondering, how do you sell to the fans taking away a home game to have these semifinal and final games at neutral sites? That's going to be a tough sell to the fans as well, of these teams, especially fans that got the best seats in the building 41 times a year.
Now, how about this inconsistency as well? So apparently, they're breaking the teams up into groups,
right?
You know, Olympic style, right?
Mm-hmm.
Still maintained in a conference. So basically, you're just switching around the different divisions, all for the sake of a tournament. A year after, you just went out your way to name awards after each division winner. So we're like, what are we supposed to care about? The group play, or the division winners? Yeah. And what's the incentive to winning your division?
Yeah, and the NBA, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't think most fans, unless if they're true diehard fans, can really name the division in which these teams playing, because divisions in basketball don't matter in the manner in which they do in other sports such as football or baseball.
East and West.
Yeah, that's all it is. And we look at the top 8 standings.
You can ask a Bulls fan which division the Bulls are in. They don't know. No, for real. Like, honestly.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And if you look at it, I mean, throughout the league, I mean, a lot of like teams, their main rival isn't even within their division.
Yep.
So, I mean, hey, NBA want to be more like soccer. Like I said, the talent pool is deeper. There is room for innovation with the game. But like I said, the regular season adding a tournament, you got, like, the conversation has been, let's get rid of some games. They literally added an 83rd game to the season. Like, they went in the complete opposite direction. Like, literally, like 72 games, 83. I just like I'm not understanding the logic. Like, what are we gonna do when like the team that wins the tournament doesn't make the playoffs? Like, how are we supposed to view them? Like, I'm just
I mean,
saying, like, let's just say,
I get
like,
what you're saying.
and like, and
I
then
get it.
I didn't see this either. Like, when is the tournament supposed to end?
Yeah. I have a lot of questions about the in-season
Like
tournament,
I said,
and I
unless,
just have to wait to see how that plays out.
like I said, unless they incentivized it with, hey, playoff berth, pick your opponent, something that really does like you got to incentivize these guys with the playoffs. Like that's what everybody cares about, the playoffs. How can we get into the playoffs as healthy as possible with the best like matchups inside of the bracket as possible? That's what we do. Like 82 games, nobody's gonna ever care about the regular season the same no more. It's too many different distractions in life now for people to really follow a sport that long throughout the season. Like even with baseball, people are going to give this first month to go, tally off May and June, NBA season's over. Get some run in July maybe, but then here comes NFL training camp. Unless it's football, man, we're a playoff. We watch the playoffs as sports fans mostly. Our team in the playoffs.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, everybody's not a trooper. I'll admit that I've watched and followed a team throughout an 82 game regular season stretch. It's not easy. It's
you
damn
did.
sure not easy.
I knew you were gonna be one of the like greats at this too. Like when you like told me about it too.
Yeah, it's not easy to do. And I followed some baseball teams as a young child throughout 162. That's not easy to do as well. And even when you do that, there are some nights, even as a fan, you like, I don't know how I'm watching this. And this is game 117 or 162. Like I've really been at this for the last several plus months. That's not easy. I love the game enough to do that, but it's not easy. And I know it's not for everybody. But when it comes to the new CBA, I just think that the NBA is the Americanized version of soccer. And you can take with that what you want to take with that, but the game is changing. And I'm trying to figure out what is it that we want to reward or incentivize. I know we want to make the regular season product more watchable, and I think that that's what they're trying to do with this all NBA and MVP requirement. But when you break it down the way that you broke it down, Torrence, in the sense where, guys can only play the first half or they agree to play the first half and then sit out. I mean, we saw a preview of that because we saw that here in Chicago with Joel Embiid. He put up like a smooth 12-5 or whatever. They was up by like 30 plus. And Doc was like, oh man, hey, big fella, sit this out.
Cal Ripken, AC Green. We've seen people just step out in uniform and go sit back down to keep a streak alive. Like it's gonna happen. So I mean, like I said, hey, you guys want to get technical, 65 games. Next, you're gonna have to do a minutes requirement because that's yeah.
You know who it will benefit though? It'll benefit a guy like Mikal Bridges, who just played 83 regular season games, and he became the first player since Josh Smith in 2015 to do that. It'll benefit him. He'll probably get a few All NBA honors.
Mikal Bridges needs an award just for being like the only guy in the league to like love basketball. Clearly, he's knocking these 82 game seasons out left and right. Like,
yeah,
and look, playing 3-and-D, running back and forth to the corners, guarding the other team's best player.
Yeah, he does it all.
Yeah, but he's the number one guy now, so we'll see how he holds up going forward.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I just brought that up because he's the guy who I think is the biggest beneficiary among active players. If you're going to put that criteria in place like they intend to. I mean, only thing I don't like about this is why are you trying to put a halt on the ability of the highest spending teams in the association, such as the Clippers and the Warriors? I don't get that. You got to spend in order to win, in my opinion. And like Michael Jordan said in The Last Dance, winning has a price. That's no different for the players as much as it is the owners. And I don't think that's a good thing to do, especially when you have some owners in this business, and sports fans in Chicago know this very well. I don't have to say names or anything like that, but you have owners that are reluctant to spend the money.
Yeah, I mean, but see, here's the thing. They're gonna spend people are gonna push the rules and find a different loopholes regardless. Like Ballmer's gonna spend to the max. Lacob's gonna spend to the max, right? You're not gonna make Michael Jordan spend an extra dollar. So that's why I said I don't think it's like that big of a deal. I know Draymond decided to speak out about it, which I believe that if he really wanted to speak on it, I think he's really more so speaking of that's another job basically that they took away from a veteran without it being like no, because that mid-level exceptions going to a high-paying team looking for like a title contender, that's a veteran's job. Yeah. But now that they're no longer incentivized to that, they'll use that roster spot for another two-way player now.
And I saw that they did open it up to where they've expanded spots for two-way players. And I don't mind that. I like that to some degree, because if you think about it, it's a lot of guys recently, such as for the Lakers, you take not only Alex Caruso prior to him coming to the Bulls, but currently Austin Reeves, who have used that two-way deal in order to get full-time NBA contracts, and they've thrived and found a niche in the league, be it with their defense or three-point shooting, or in the case of Austin Reeves, he's looking like a guy who could potentially get him a nice, solid deal for the next 3 to 4 years, if not with the Lakers somewhere else, and really expand upon his game, which he's already done in just his second season with the Lakers. As you see him, handling the ball in a pick and roll and showing an ability to not only create shots for himself, but other teammates as well, prior to LeBron coming back from injury.
Yeah. Like I think that was kind of like more so what I meant about like the shout out to Udonis Haslem, because you see how that all ties together. Like he would have been like in today's league, he would have been a G League project. He would have been a two-way he would have been a two-way contract. But then on the flip side of it, most teams are not gonna have a Udonis Haslem on their roster because they'd rather bet on the potential of one of their G League prospects. He's cheaper, comes with less requirements, less back talk, so I mean, like I said, I can see why Draymond would be upset about that. And plus he's at that age where you feel like the guys on the committee, like the CJ McCollums, and like these are guys you can't like for years. We knew that Chris Paul, when he was the president of the Players Association, him, Bron, and D Wade and guys like that were gonna be good.
Oh yeah.
He made sure that it benefited the guys at the top, like before anything else. We'll throw what we can to the middle class and the rookies and everything.
Yeah, Chris definitely looked out for guys like D-Wade, Bron, and Melo. Yeah, a lot of people forget that, and people who don't study the business ramifications of basketball. If you go back and look at Chris Paul's tenure as the president of the Players Association, he definitely took care of his guys, including himself, and to a great degree, and he's still eating off of that.
Yeah.
But I want to move on from CBA talk to addressing NBA rumors around the league, starting with former Celtics head coach Ime Udoka, who could reportedly draw some interest from the Raptors as well as the Rockets this coming summer, who now have an open vacant spot in the head coaching department. The Raptors, as we know, Nick Nurse is still roaming the sideline strong, but it's been a lot of talks. He's in the final year of his deal. Which landing spot do you believe would be best for Ime Udoka in the long term, or which place do you believe could use him more?
Between those two teams?
Yeah, I mean, or any other team, it could be any team in the league, like, because the Pistons have also been said to express interest in Ime Udoka as well.
So me personally, if his options are between the teams like the Rockets and the Pistons, that means that there like seems to be like an understanding around the league that he can't get certain jobs. That's how I look at it. Because if I'm him and I took a team to the NBA Finals and I didn't lose my job because of performance-based reasons, oh no, I'm holding out for one of them real jobs. Like let's one of these veteran laden teams like flame out in the postseason. Whether maybe Cuban decides, Jason Kidd's not the guy no more in Dallas. Maybe the Sixers feel like Doc isn't the guy anymore. I just don't see him going from having a Jason Tatum, a Jaylen Brown making a deep playoff push and, falling all the way back to taking on the Rockets or the Pistons job. Maybe a guy like, Victor might be enticing to him in those situations, but I mean, from like Udoka's resume, even doing the Team USA stuff, I mean, I think he's a guy that wants a big job with the superstar, and he wants to coach games that matter. I don't really see those jobs for him. I mean, I think it's good that he gets his name back out there in the press, check the temperature, see, because I'd look at it like that. I'd rather put my name next to a more low-key job, see how the media takes it, see what's the conversation, the talk is, as opposed to, hey, Udoka, he could be the next coach of the LA Lakers. That's a whole different conversation, firestorm, But if I'm him, I'm holding out for a better job after this postseason.
I can understand your reasoning and assessment for why you say that. I don't think it would be fair to him. However, if recent reports coming out of Houston really develop, and let's say James Harden do want to go back to Houston, and let's say they do land the top overall pick in the draft and you get Wembanyama, and let's say you can use that open cap space that you have to possibly acquire a veteran wing over there, then maybe that can become an attractive enough job. However, when you bought up Philadelphia, that would make perfect sense, especially if Philadelphia was to not reach the conference finals yet once again. Because just looking at his track record and his resume, Ime Udoka was an assistant in Philadelphia for a year. Under, I believe it was Brett Brown during his final season with the Sixers. He would be a perfect guy in Philadelphia if they want to move on from Doc, considering what he did in Boston and whatnot. And I agree. I would prefer to see Ime Udoka in a situation, especially after leading the Celtics to the finals in his first official head season and full head season as a head coach. I would prefer to see him with a contender as opposed to being in a rebuild situation or a situation where it was unknown, But unless if Houston's going to go all in and just, put some veterans in there with that young talent that they have to show them guys how to win, and they just want a veteran coach who's been there and done that to lead the way, I don't see it. Toronto, I definitely don't see. I don't see Toronto at all. I see if they're going to move on from Nick Nurse, I see them going more so in the direction of a younger coach, someone who's not proven. I wouldn't even be shocked if they went down to the G League like they did for Nick Nurse.
Yeah, I mean, Toronto, Masai, I think they're running on their own accord over there. I'm definitely looking at a more low-key, maybe in-house move like you just alluded to with them. The Rockets, I mean, I'm not betting on a 35-year-old James Harden, like, enticing me to take a job. Now, between the locations, we attached to Udoka's name, Houston, Detroit, and Toronto. I mean, he's a funny guy. I'd say that much. I guess he wants to keep it in the streets and away from the organization this time. But yeah, other than that, I mean, like, look at the Knicks. I mean, Tom Thibodeau, another first round exit. I mean, that job could be open. So I just don't see him going to a lottery team.
That's fair. I understand that assessment. Next rumor I want to address is a rumor that you kind of slightly addressed when we were talking about the Mavericks, and that involves Luka Doncic, who, according to ESPN's Tim McMahon, it's a possibility that or not even a possibility, rather, the organization is fearful that he could request a trade come next summer in 2024. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think he would have a valid reason to request the trade?
Yeah, I mean, he could have a valid reason to request a trade, but Mark Cuban's not trading him. So I just think it's just the NBA, the media. I mean, Bron, Steph, KD, you know, those storylines are getting old. Those guys are getting old. If we look at there's no anticipation for the free agency class this season, off season.
It's not.
There isn't any anticipation for free agency going forward. The new thing is who's the next disgruntled superstar that needs to get traded. I think the writing's on the wall with Dame. So we need to push a story into the future. Okay, Luka missed the playoffs one time. Now, like, the sky's falling. Nah, every superstar goes through this. You know, whether it's a first round exit, whether it's consecutive exits in the playoffs because of a lack of a supporting cast. I mean, he's not going through anything no different. Like I said, Mark Cuban's going to keep the one star there. And, I mean, how big is a trade package for a Luka Doncic that's, 24, 25 years old?
Oh, it's going to be grand. You talk about multiple first-round picks with a young player attached to it.
And like I said, too, Luka, I mean, he's a great, amazing offensive. But, I mean, like, you really going to trade all of that for somebody who can't help you on the other end? Because you have to wipe your team out to even make the move happen.
That's true.
So, I mean, like, I don't see the trade. Of course, it's the NBA, anything's possible. But even I just ran through it in my head right now. If a team had the number one pick this year's draft, would they trade that pick for Luka Doncic?
I don't think they would one bit. Whoever gets the number one pick, I don't think that they would do that, especially after watching the tape on Victor Wembanyama. I don't think that they would even take that chance.
Would the number two team do it?
I don't even know. I don't think they would. It depends on who that number two team is. But even if I knew, I don't think they would do it.
And we're talking about a 25-year-old MVP candidate.
Yeah. But then you got to think about this too, though. And I understand why you're thinking about how hard a trade package would be for Luka, because think about what we just witnessed last summer in the Rudy Gobert deal.
Kevin Durant trade.
And the Kevin Durant trade as well. You know, you talking about 3 to 4 first-round picks with
3 starters.
Yeah, 3 starters. And in the Minnesota trade, like, they gave up Walker Kessler, who is looking like a future first-team all-defense selection in the future out in Salt Lake City. And a guy that is capable of leading the league in blocks and serving as the anchor behind the top 5 defense once Danny Ainge finds a way to put quality pieces around him and Lauri Markkanen in that front court.
And you see that's crazy that, like, you have more faith in Danny Ainge putting together a great roster in Utah as opposed to, like, Dallas's ability to put something around Luka Doncic.
Yeah.
Give Danny Ainge Luka Doncic.
It's crazy, but then not even just Danny Ainge. You look at everybody else that's in that front office. You know, they've always drafted well in Utah. Places like Indiana. Look at what Indiana's building right now with Benedict Mathurin and Andrew Nembhard. People laughed at them for giving Andrew Nembhard the highest deal in history for a second round draft pick. And in the games when he played and he got extended minutes, he looked fairly well.
He looked like the money.
Yeah.
Dallas doesn't even draft well.
No, they don't. And if you go by like past history and you take a guy like Jaden Hardy, who they did draft, who played well through the last month and a half of the season, Jason Kidd didn't even really give him that much playing time.
Because he's off the timeline. You need veterans around Luka right now that's ready to win today.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm saying. That's what makes the trade. That makes the trade. It'll literally have to be a scenario which like the Kawhi and Paul George thing happened, where there's already a guy going there and we're just going to trade everything else to get Luka. Other than that, I don't see it. And then we got to think about like the location thing too. Where would he want to go? Does he want to go somewhere with somebody already somewhere? Does he just want out of Dallas and their organization? Yeah, I just think it's just a storyline that's being created. I don't actually see any validity to it. And I know he has the situation going on with his mother, so maybe in a year or two, he might be with a different agency, a different circle of people, might want to just have a fresh start everywhere. But between it being Mark Cuban and basketball reasons, there's no Luka Doncic trade coming. Kevin Durant's 34 years old. No one would trade a 25-year-old Kevin Durant.
No, even OKC did do that, even though they traded a future MVP. That was a teammate of his that just, they didn't know that at the time. I don't think anybody did.
Yeah. Well, when a guy's willing to be a sixth man, you probably would question whether he would actually rise to the level of MVP because he was comfortable being a sixth man. Most guys who have that type of talent, they're irked and irritated that they're even like somebody had the audacity to have them come off the bench.
No, that's true. So, that's true. I get what you're saying. But moving on from the Luka Doncic situation in Dallas to Ty Lue in Los Angeles. Now, there's been a lot of reports coming out recently with people saying that there's a possibility that Ty Lue could seek to step away from the Los Angeles Clippers this offseason. Now, we know the Clippers are going into the playoffs, set to have a first round matchup with Phoenix that tips off this upcoming weekend on Sunday. I believe the time is to be determined as of this recording. But no Paul George. But you still got Kawhi Leonard. You got Russell Westbrook. This is a team that in Ty Lue's first season, he took to the Western Conference Finals. Had them within 2 games of reaching the NBA Finals. Their first Western Conference Finals in franchise history. As you said earlier, the Clippers have spent money with the best of them. It still has not netted them a championship. Do you think Ty Lue will step away from the Clippers this offseason? And if he does, what do you think that means for this franchise going forward? Who could easily seek to break it up if they wanted after 4 years with Paul and Kawhi and no championship?
I mean, I definitely see Ty Lue stepping down this offseason. Like, because the writing's on the wall with that situation. You know what I mean? Like, even a first round exit, it looks very likely, even at this moment. A first round exit seems inevitable even at this moment. Yeah, I just don't. I don't see him wanting to take the blame for the shortcomings of this situation, and I can see it being frustrating. Year after year, you don't know which guys are going to show up, ready to play each night. I don't think Paul George and Kawhi played like a total of like a month or 2 of basketball together, like consistently, like in the past 4 years. And even back in his Cleveland days, he had issues. He was having some medical issues during the postseason one of those years.
I remember that.
Then he's spoken about like the different deaths and things in his family. So I can see him wanting to take a year away from the game. And once again, like an Ime Udoka, hey, step away and a better, more reasonable opportunity could present itself. I mean, this is a tough job. This is not the job he took on either. He didn't take this job expecting like these guys to basically not play basketball together for 4 years. I don't see that. And as far as the organization itself, I mean, I think players see Ballmer spending the money. So I anticipate the Clippers will be able to carry forward even if moves need to get made in the interim because they don't have any draft picks.
Yeah. And that's the thing that makes the situation so like big to monitor, in my opinion, because they don't have any draft picks. They traded all their draft capital to get Paul George. And they got a lot riding on these playoffs in the West this year. And just watching that team in person in January here in Chicago get down early in the game and just watching the way Ty was monitoring the sidelines and roaming up and down, you could tell the stress was getting to him and that it is getting to him. You can see it, like calling timeouts, frustrated. And that's tough when you don't know who's going to play. And you talk about not only just with Kawhi and PG, but like Norm Powell has missed extended time. And Norm Powell is, when healthy, has been one of the top 6 men in all of basketball. So when you don't know who you're going to have on any given night, that's tough as hell to manage. And then, as you alluded to, and I read about that prior to the show, I didn't know he had several deaths in his family. He said, like, the state of the team was so up and down that I didn't even feel comfortable leaving the team to attend these family funerals. And that's deep.
Yeah, and to top it all off, y'all decided to bring Russell Westbrook into the fold. Now you throw another like situation at my feet to figure out. Now I gotta like work with this ego as well. And coming off of the situation he just left.
Yeah, it's not an easy one
and
at all.
There's gonna be a fall guy for this Clippers situation. So I fully anticipate before he gets unceremoniously fired, it'll just be a step down. You put the story out there early, so when it happens, even if it's a mutual decision on both sides, I mean, he still leaves with, some respect. Because look at like a Steven Silas, well, he might not get another job. He was fired. It's looked at different when a guy steps down as opposed to being fired.
For sure. I mean, we saw that firsthand with Rick Carlisle in Dallas a couple of years ago after they got sent home by the Clippers in 7 games. He said he resigned and he was able to parlay that into a head coaching job with Indiana, where he's currently on his second stint there with the franchise as the head coach. So, yeah, that can happen. I wouldn't be shocked by that. But, we got these play-in games set to tip off this week. You got Hawks and the Heat, Timberwolves and the Lakers on TNT. The winners of those respective matchups in both the East and the West will take on the Celtics and Grizzlies respectively, where the losers of those matchups will take on the winner of the 9 versus 10 matchups within their respective conferences in an effort to fight for the 8th and final seed and take on either the Bucks or Nuggets within their respective conferences. You also got the Bulls and the Raptors on Wednesday, followed by Thunder and Pelicans. Those will be the 10-9 matchups in the East and West. I don't know if you're looking forward to any of these play-in games, but I want to ask you, among the playoff matchups that are already set to watch in the first round, between the Sixers and the Nets in the East, the Cavs and the Knicks, and the Kings, Warriors, Suns, and Clippers in the West, which one are you looking forward to watching the most this coming weekend?
Oh, definitely the Kings, Warriors. I think it's gonna be a great test for Golden State, more so than the Kings coming out this postseason. I mean, the Kings, they're gonna get up and down the floor. They're gonna test Golden State's shot making ability because they're gonna be able to keep right up with Steph and Clay. They're gonna be able to throw a lot of different wings at Clay. You know, I mean, you can't do anything with Steph. But Clay, hey, if we can get De'Aaron Fox to outscore Clay, you know, or between the combination of him and Sabonis to outscore Steph and Clay, maybe we can have a chance. Mike Brown being on that coaching staff the last few years, being familiar with what the Warriors like to run, what they like to do. And I mean, hey, this is the last dance for them guys over there, you know? So I feel like, hey, the writing's on the wall. I wouldn't be surprised if that turns into a very tough series, like a tough 6-game series for the Warriors. So that's my favorite matchup going into the postseason as of right now.
For me, yeah, that Battle of Northern California is going to be something to watch. And everybody loves to say, well, Sacramento, that's the team you want to face because they don't have that much experience. Harrison Barnes played some NBA finals. People forget that. Mike Brown done coached in the NBA finals, not only as a head coach, but as an assistant, you know, multiple times in San Antonio, as well as with the Warriors as a recent year. So these guys have experience. And even though they have some young guys that may be inexperienced, those guys are going to come ready to compete. You talk about putting defensive pressure on Clay. One of the guys who I think will be key in that I named is Harrison Barnes, but another one will be the young rookie Keegan Murray, who as of late has really come into his own, shooting the ball with a ton of confidence, and him getting a taste of the playoffs in his first year as a rookie. I think that's huge. And I'm excited to see this Kings team because they can go 8 to 9 deep on any given night. And is the only question I have with them, though, is can they defense hold up? But I do believe that they're going to have some great shootout games, and you're going to see a lot of high-scoring games. And if you're a fan that loves offensive basketball, then this is your series for certain.
I mean, but you see, like, even the thing with the Warriors, though, they don't have home court. They haven't been great on the road this season.
Right.
The Kings, I mean, they playing with house money. It, like, honestly, this worked out the best for them. This is the defending champs. We not supposed to be in this. We have nothing to lose.
And you know that's the attitude they're gonna have, especially playing in front of them fans at the Golden One Center.
And this is the most mentally weak like team out of all the Warriors teams since Steve Kerr's been there. Everything gets under this team's skin. And they're constantly reminding everybody about how many rings they got. They need some respect. And I always say that's the ultimate sign of being old right there, when you start pulling your resume out your back pocket every conversation. So, I mean, who's to say after a game 1 or 2, like, if this team's able to snatch one in San Francisco, like, this series can't turn on its head. Because I mean, me personally, like I said, I feel like the Warriors are gonna, like, this is it. You know, round 1, round 2, it's over with. So I'm looking forward to how they come out in the postseason.
I think everybody is, because they got so much riding on it. And then you got Andrew Wiggins, a guy who was a vital piece defensively, returning to the fold after, all the stuff he's gone through off the floor. And now you're asking him to come back and give everything he has, but you don't know what this dude's game shape is going to look like.
He hasn't played basketball all season. Like, everybody keeps saying what all he's been through. I mean, I don't know what he's been through, but that's one. And
based on what's been said.
I mean, a lot has been said.
I know,
but even outside of that, he hasn't played basketball much this season anyway. And I never trust those type of teams in the postseason. Usually, the team that wins the title, they've had some level of continuity like throughout the season. And the Warriors have been all over the place all season. It's gonna be an interesting run for them this year.
The other series I'm looking forward to watching is Cavs and Knicks. I think that's going to be a hell of a series too out east. But among these play-in games on the schedule, what are you looking forward to seeing the most?
Oh, the Lakers. The Lakers, 100%. because I'm still curious. I'm still curious as to one. Bron came out looking great in that last game against Utah. Of course, it was a lot of G leaguers, but throughout history, we've known Bron to go up another level in the postseason. And that Utah game, I would say that was kind of a preview. 36 in the first game. Like, is he gonna have the same type of play going forward? And also, like, we'll see, like, who do they want to play in the first round? Like, are they trying to get to the 8th seed? Like, are they willing to, like, take a back seat against Minnesota and get that first round matchup against Denver and play against the winner of the Clippers in Phoenix? Like, does that road to the finals favor them more, or does it favor them more to play a young Memphis team and either Golden State or Sacramento? I mean, when you talk about a veteran team, I always look at the mental chess element of it.
You have to.
So
I'm
more curious about that. I'm not like the East. Nobody's beating like Milwaukee or Boston. They're not giving them a tough matchup. So it's just a formality at that point.
The Western Conference playing round is more intriguing. I think even the Thunder and Pelicans matchup is very intriguing, especially with the way that Brandon Ingram's been playing. And he's had to do everything and more to guide that New Orleans roster without Zion in the mix. And it's unfortunate he won't be a part of this year's play-in for the second year in a row in New Orleans. But going up against a young Thunder squad who you know is going to be hungry after a lot of people did not expect them to be here. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been playing phenomenal. Jalen Williams on the ball, off the ball has been solid. I'm just intrigued to see what this group is going to do. And the thing I'm fascinated by is that they managed to get to this point without their number 2 overall pick in Chet Holmgren, who, as we know, suffered that foot injury at Jamal Crawford's Pro-Am tournament in Seattle and won't be able to make his debut until next year. But yeah, the Lakers, man, if the Lakers beat Minnesota and they get into that matchup with Memphis, that's going to be a hell of a series, man. You talk about the matchups between Dylan Brooks, LeBron James, and then you got AD going up against Jaren Jackson Jr., who's going to have to be very disciplined as a defender without Steven Adams, who is set to miss the entire postseason due to his PCL strain.
And
like,
no Brandon Clark.
Huh?
And no Brandon Clark.
Yeah, and no Brandon Clark, exactly. So without those two guys, Jaren Jackson's going to have to be extremely disciplined as a defender and make sure that he's staying out of foul trouble, all the while being that solid number 3 option that they need him to be within the Florida Grizzlies offense besides Desmond Bane and John Morant.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why I anticipate the Lakers coming out to just really honestly just take care of business round 1. I mean, in the play-in, because you play Memphis, AD and LeBron, I mean, there's no paint protection because even like Jaren Jackson, he's going to get in foul trouble. And we need the drama too because we didn't get the Phoenix Golden State round 1 matchup. So outside of a Lakers Grizzlies matchup, none of these teams really have any like animosity against each other, and we need at least one like series with some type of drama.
I think it's a lot of drama in a few of these series, especially Suns Clippers. You got Russell going up against KD.
We had that 3-4 years ago. That's old news now. That's old. I mean, I'm just being real. That's old news. Like Russ' career is gonna be different after this season. KD 35. Like both of them are on like what? Russ been on what, four teams since?
Yeah.
Rockets.
Yeah.
The
Rockets, Wizards, Lakers, and the Clippers. Yeah.
And KD, this is his 3rd team since the OKC days. So I'm not. Now, if I see them on the court against each other, I'm not blinking. And so, yeah, I don't really see too much, with that. If Paul George was there, I'd be more into the KD and Book against PG and Kawhi matchup more than anything.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I'm just looking forward to the playoffs because, as we know, this is when the game slows down. Everything is half court based, and your weaknesses will get exposed because everybody knows what you're running. The question is can you stop it and do enough, to get the dub in the series at the end of the day and advance to the next round? It's nothing like it to me. And this is, like I said, this is when you really see who the top dogs are from the stars, as well as the teams and even the coaches who are going to be throwing as many counter schemes as they can to try and, keep the opponent off balance. But with that being said, I'd like to thank everyone who took out the time this week to listen in to yet another installment of Open Run. Want to show some love and appreciation to my man Torrence Stagger for stepping in, filling in for my man Josh Hicks. Make sure to check out all our shows on War Media, At Bat Podcast with Saul Rodriguez and Miles Porter. You might see some special faces in there talking about early season Cubs and White Sox baseball, where they could go moving forward, as well as other hot news across the Major League Baseball scene and more. For myself, Gabriel Wilkins, my man Torrence Stagger. So long, everybody.